with Ananda. And I should also, mention that, beyond the brief introduction, he is a truly remarkable, how to put it, embodiment of the highest traditions of yoga, because he grew up, and so in that kind of in the environment of an ashram. And I remember when this time I spent there, that we were not allowed to wear shoes. We were barefoot. That was a very minimal thing. And the Karma Yoga involved, cleaning the toilets, and the volume of food was rather sort of frugal, and but it was extremely delicious and tasty. And I remember that this young boy, now how do I put it, an authority in yoga, has been trained in classical music, dance, singing, percussion. And so he embodies the many different facets of India's civilizational heritage as lived and practiced in an ashram community. And that's what he still does. Where he lives is an ashram, where students come and live with the family and other teachers. And while he juxtaposes that with a medical degree and a specialization in yoga chikitsa, which really is yoga therapy, and to focus the inheritance of his the yoga traditions into applying them, not just for a sort of a generalized a response to contemporary emotional, physical challenges, but to treat them specifically. So it is a great honor and a blessing, and we now call Meenakshi Devi Ammaji, and she too has been my teacher, and I believe she's sort of watching this. So my greetings and pranams to you, Ammaji, and for this wonderful, for me, young boy, now young man, who is going to be sharing the screen with us. So let's start by sort of, the question that is coming up for most of us today, and I start many of these sessions with that question, is that, we have been through COVID, we've been through isolation, we have been through so many challenges at these times. And, suppose I was that young boy who came to your father 45 years ago and said, look, I am tired, I'm exhausted, my mind is frazzled, what do I do? Now, I had 2 months to invest, staying with the family, but here's someone who comes into your ashram and doesn't really have a background in either yoga or India's sort of traditions. What would you say to him?
First of all, a very warm welcome to each and everyone, and thank you, Rajiv ji, for those kind words. The last couple of years have been a great struggle for each and everyone, whether they are in yoga or not in yoga. Because anybody who's been on this planet for the last 2 years has not only struggled with COVID, but struggled with the mental stress that has disheartened us as humanity. So if today we had people coming in, and we do, I think the most important message that yoga has is you have to become self-reliant. You have to empower yourself from within, strengthen yourself from within, because as my beloved father would say, health and happiness are your birthright. Moksha is your goal. And he would say, if you want to be happy, do happy things. If you want to be healthy, do healthy things. And I think I would just parrot those very words to the young people today. If you want to be healthy, do healthy things. If you want to be happy, do happy things. And remember, you alone are responsible for your experience on this planet.
So tell us, we'll take, what are some of the happy things that we can do, in particular when we're already drooping,
Yes.
without energy, those of us who've recovered from COVID or from long COVID.
Exactly.
And yoga seems very energetic. And so you say, where am I going to find the energy to to get into the complicated postures that most people show us on television. So first, where do we find the energy? And then we'll move on.
Well, first of all, yoga is not the acrobatics we see on screen most of the time, because asana is only one of the components of yoga. And at this point in human history, I believe that proper healthy breathing and relaxation are the key elements to revitalizing us and enabling us to have the energy to do what we need to do to be happy and healthy. So the two key messages we give people today, especially with long COVID, is healthy breathing, slow, deep, mindful breathing. And the second is give yourself a chance to relax, let go, and give over to something higher. So the two key messages, pranayama and relaxation.
Okay, so we'll jump straight into it and ask you to give us, to demonstrate
Yes.
for a person who's never done any pranayama before. What are the 2 or 3 things, you can spend take 5 minutes doing that,
Yes.
that we can start with?
Exactly. What we normally start with is asking people to try to sit with the spine aligned. So the emphasis is on alignment, because when the body is aligned, the mind will get aligned. So the first message, as Ammaji always says, sit straight. That is the first message, sit straight. The second message, be quiet. And the third message, listen. So Ammaji's very beautiful message, sit straight, be quiet, listen. So with that message, what we would start with is to tell people to first of all close the eyes. Because when we close our eyes, we stop engaging with the sensory world, which is a distractor, a detractor, a distractor from the final goal. So the sensory engagement is reduced the moment we close the eyes. The second thing we suggest is to start to contemplate the way the breath is coming into you through your nostrils. So the nostrils become the first point of contemplation. And the Bhagavad Gita, which is a yoga shastra, says the same thing. Aligning the body, neck, and head, focus on the tip of the nostril. This is the message given, practical message. And when you do that, start to follow the way the breath comes in your nostrils, coming down the back of the air passages, coming down into your lungs, and settling into each and every one of those billions and trillions of alveoli that are there in your lungs. As you breathe out, be aware of the air coming out of those alveoli, coming up your air passages, the back of the throat, and out through the nostrils. So we start to focus mindfully on how the breath is coming in the nostril, coming into the lungs. And then as we breathe out, coming from the lungs, coming up and out the nostrils. So the first focus is on the process of the breath. The second process is to focus on the temperature difference. The temperature difference between inhaled air and exhaled air. So the moment you breathe in, you're breathing in the cool air. Of course, depends on where you are on this planet. But normally the air we breathe in is cool. So the cool inspired air coming into your lungs. And then it is getting heated up by the body metabolism. The body metabolism is heating the air. And as you breathe out, be aware of the warm air coming out the nostrils. So the first component was the breathing in and breathing out. The second is the temperature gradient. And then the third one is be aware that every time you breathe in, it is the universal prana, the energy of the cosmos coming into you. It is the universal becoming the individual. And as you breathe out, be aware of how the individuality is given up and becoming the universal again. And this is one of the key elements by which you can slow down the breath. You can deepen the breath. And the moment we deal with the breath, the mind starts to come under control. Chale vate chale chittam, says the Hatha Pradipika. How the breath goes, the mind will go. Nischale nischalam bhavat. And that is why this focus, which is mindful, people say mindfulness is something different. I say mindfulness is part and parcel of the yoga tradition. Dhyana, what we call meditation today, is part and parcel of the yoga tradition. In fact, it is the heart. And as we focus on the breath like this, we start to attune to ourselves and we begin a beautiful conversation with the self. We are having a conversation with our own self through the breath. This is one of the first things we need to do, because all the time we are thinking about somebody else. We are thinking about having a conversation with somebody else, and most probably not even listening to the other person, because we are already trying to think what I'm going to say next. Here you're having a conversation with yourself. So pranayama as a conversation with your own self, using the breath as a medium and feeling that beautiful communion between you as the drop and the universe as the ocean. And this is why it immediately gives us an opportunity to find a sense of balance. This is one of the first things we do. The second thing during COVID is we add sound, nada. Because the moment you add nada, especially the makara nada, the sound of that humming. So if you don't want to do yoga, you don't want to do nada, you don't want to do pranayama, you can still hum any tune you want. Even that you can do. Hum honge kamyab. You can do that. Nothing wrong. Hum a tune. The moment you hum, and we do it in the Brahmari, we do it in the Pranava. The moment you hum, what you are doing is that you are bringing about a relaxation of all your nervous system. You're relaxing the blood vessels and you're opening up all the air passages. And endogenous nitric oxide, this is for those who love, the scientific validation. Endogenous nitric oxide, which will come into your sinuses and help the ventilation. This is the best protection against COVID. And after you get COVID into long COVID, this is the best way to regain your lung function, breathe healthy. And if you breathe healthy, every cell in your body is going to be healthy. So the two things we do, becoming mindful of the respiration, giving them a count of 6. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah. This is called Sukha Pranayama.
Okay, so why don't you just, you had mentioned sit straight, the posture. So why don't you spend 5 minutes or 3 minutes, because there's a lot of to cover. And why don't you lead us all through both the breathing, and then we'll talk for a bit, and then through, say, the Brahmari, how what the
okay, beautiful. Why not?
So that we really have an experience of it,
hands-on experience,
and what constitutes the correct posture. Exactly. Assuming that we are people like me who can no longer sit on Padmasana. So we'll keep assuming you're sitting in a chair, and
we can do the chair asana.
Yes. So
chair asana is also allowed.
Yes. So something like,
I'm also down a chair here for the sake of this.
So let's do something that's simple and accessible, and that will be a training for us. And now we'll get into more of these ideas.
Beautiful.
Here I am.
So wherever you are, begin to adjust yourself, the lower part of the body where you are basing your weight. Try to be aware of where your weight is balanced. Where is your sama? Where is your sthiti? Where is that equilibrium on which you are sitting, the base, the foundation of where you are sitting right now? The posture which we are sitting itself becomes our asana, because literally asana is a seated posture. Becoming aware of this pelvic region, the hip joint that is coming into this. Let your mind focus on the base of the spine. Be aware of how that spine, the vertebral column, is built vertebra by vertebra, one on top of the other. 33 vertebrae constituting the whole spine. Be aware as you come up from the base, how each of these is being aligned. Be mindful as if you're putting a brick one on top of the other and building this beautiful building, which is your spine, the Brahma Danda, the Meru Danda. And as you come up, be aware of the lower back. There's a slight curvature, a natural curvature in the lower back, coming up to the region of the middle back that is associated with your chest and connected to the rib cage. And then coming up into your shoulders, be aware where your shoulders are, how the shoulder girdle is connected to your spine. And then coming up into your neck, being aware of these beautiful bones, 7 cervical bones, small bones there. And then on top of this whole edifice, the human skull. Be aware whether your chin is protruding by adjusting yourself slightly so that your chin comes down a little bit, and adjust yourself to see whether now you feel a sense of continuity, a sense of oneness between the base of your spine and the top of the head. Does it feel as if it is all aligned? Settling into the sthiti, a position where we are stable and to some extent at ease, because an asana should be sthira and sukha. And then begin to let your mind come to the process of your breathing. Just become aware of how your chest expands as you breathe in and how it contracts as you breathe out. Being aware of the movements of the chest and how they are constantly happening without even our thinking about it. Now slowly bring your awareness to the tip of your nostril, the tip of the nose, the nasagra, and begin to feel the cool air coming in as you breathe in. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as you breathe out, the air coming from the lungs out the nostrils. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Follow the flow of the air through the nostrils into the lungs as you breathe in. And follow the pattern of the flow of the air as it comes out of your lungs and up the respiratory passages and out your nostrils as you breathe. Let the breath be equal between inhalation and exhalation. This process creates a sukham, a sense of comfort, ease within our mind-body complex. Hence it is called the Sukha Pranayama. Make sure that you are mindful of the breath. Be aware of the temperature changes. Every time you breathe in, the cool air coming in. Every time you breathe out, the warm air going out. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, as you breathe in, I want you to contemplate the sound of a bee. This is the Brahmari. Let the mind contemplate what a bee sounds like. And as we breathe out, let us make an extended bee sound through the humming. So breathing in. And as you breathe out, taking in a deep breath and breathing out with the sound. Mm. Taking in a nice deep breath and breathing out. Mm. Now to potentiate this, you can bring your thumbs to close the ears. Don't close them too much because you won't hear me. The two fingers over the eyes, the ring fingers at the nostrils, and the little finger at the lips. And as we now do the Brahmari, you will be able to feel the vibration much more within yourself. So taking in a deep breath, and now out. Taking in a deep breath. And one more time, breathing in. Keeping your eyes closed, bringing your hands down to your lap. Sitting quietly. Let that ringaram, the sound of the Brahmari, that bee sound resonate within the skull. When we close off all the orifices of the sensory apparatus, the sound can resonate in the skull. And it is said this Brahmari produces unexcelled happiness, joy, an experience of the vibratory power of Nada itself. Keeping your eyes closed, start to rub your palms together, generating a nice warmth. And then placing the warm palms gently over your eyes so that the warmth from your palms can come into the eyes. Blinking into that semi-darkness a few times. Continuing to blink, let your hands slowly come down and continue blinking as you open up to the light of the external world. This is a very shortened trailer of the full movie, but this is how the practice would be led and done. And the Brahmari, when we resonate the sound with the ears closed especially, that vibration can be felt throughout the skull. And it's an amazing feeling because it just works on all the neuropeptides, harmonizing all the balance, be it dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, all of those feel-good hormones, well, they all come into play.
Thank you very much. We have, I believe, confused our understanding of yoga, its philosophy and practice. For example, as I have learned from your father and later on other teachers, was that the body is merely an instrument, and the practice of asana and then pranayama actually is preceded by yama and niyama. And that, while, if you're struggling with COVID and you need an emergency intervention, the kind of practices that you have mentioned are extremely valuable. And again, your own teacher, Mr. Desikacharya, used to say, because I'd asked him this question, I said, there is this structure that yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama, but why are you talking about pranayama at the outset? And he'd say, well, in a sense that if you're in such a bad space, then to do the pranayama can prepare you to go back to doing the yama and niyama. And the yama and niyama is sort of And I'm going to ask you to very briefly talk about it because they are the ethical principles that circumscribe this, and in some ways are common to many traditions, and each one has a different level of emphasis. Is that unless that makes up the foundation of one's practice, it can lead to other complications and problems. And so today, as yoga is being popularized on a mass scale, I think we're losing sight of this very important factor. And I think it's important that all of us get a sense and understand why this is important and the risks that are involved in just plunging into a purely physical practice.
Yes, this is perfectly said, because the foundation of the Ashtanga of Maharishi Patanjali is the Yama Niyama, which is called Adhikara Yoga. So the Yamas and Niyamas together are called Adhikara Yoga because they make you an Adhikarin who's capable of the higher sadhana. And often my father used to say, if the Yama and Niyama are not part of your sadhana, yoga only makes you better whatever you are. So if you are a thief, you become a better thief. If you are a criminal, you become a better criminal, because you are not changed by the practices if the Yama and Niyama are not there. So I think in modern times, our emphasis on the physicality of yoga at the cost of the spirituality of yoga and the sociology of yoga. Yama and Niyama give us social balance because they restrain the subhuman tendencies, they enhance the humane qualities. So when you restrain the subhuman and you enhance the human, you have a better society.
Sorry, so then, say that I should have clarified that the Yama and Niyama provides the moral, ethical framework.
Exactly.
So I'm just so that we know what we're talking about. Sorry.
Yeah. Because when we talk about the Yama, we are talking about those practices that become part of you. So it is not that you practice non-violence. Non-violence is you. You personify non-violence. It is not that you only speak the truth. You become truthfulness personified. And Maharishi Patanjali gives a very beautiful emphasis on the Yama Niyama. And when the students come to us for 6-month teachers training, the first 3 months, the whole satsanga is only about Yama Niyama. And people go into it in threadbare detail so that it is not something you just study, it is something that becomes you. And this is why when Patanjali says that if you embody ahimsa, violence will cease in your presence. Because the violence will not have a space. It is like darkness will cease when the light manifests. You become the light of non-violence, the light of truthfulness, and all of these qualities. But often people say, well, if you try to start with Yama Niyama, you'll lose your student by the 2nd class. So they start with asana, they start with pranayama, and they hope to come back. But then they get so lost in this maze of consumerism, where instead of a guru shishya, it becomes a provider and a consumer. So the moment it is a provider-consumer relationship, the consumer dictates what you are going to teach them, not the guru dictating what the student needs. So I think the tradition itself has changed drastically, but Yama Niyama are the foundation for the whole yoga life itself.
Just to sort of show off my limited knowledge acquired from your ashram that many years ago, that some of the elements of are the cultivation of ahimsa, non-violence, satya, truthfulness, non-falsehood, asteya, non-stealing, brahmacharya, which really means more rather than chastity per se, but sexual discipline. And of course, non-possessiveness, and that the niyamas are, and that we should, of course, carry on as a long list. But I think it's, from what I recall, purity, cleanness of mind, contentment, acceptance, perseverance, study of the Vedas, and the contemplation of Ishvara, and so on and so forth. And just to give our community a flavor, and these are fairly classic across different different traditions. But so it is important that the practice has elements of how to put it, some content, in a sense,
Exactly.
of an aspiration. And um, and then there is also this aspect of the relationship between mind and body, and that Patanjali, of course, didn't go into great detail about the asanas, and he really talked about just the posture that you needed for meditation, or the journey forward. And then it was people like the great icons, Krishnamacharya and Iyengar, B.K. Iyengar, Desikachar, Dr. Swami Geetanand, your father and your mother, who really began to give the create, in a sense, the asanas. And I remember a very memorable visit to Mr. B.K. Iyengar, who was my teacher later, just before he was, a few months before he was to pass on and to leave his body. And he was in a very complex kind of asana, and his family were very reluctant. Why are you doing this at this age? So I said, Guruji, at this age, you've mastered it all. And he said, there are still parts of my body that my consciousness has not reached. And so it is this relationship of emotion, feeling, consciousness with the body, and that it is the practice of yoga that enables us to access those levels of consciousness through the body.
Exactly.
So as a very advanced, experienced practitioner, so how do we, when it comes for asana, and how do we begin this journey of practicing first asana and then pranayama, really, if in a more classical form? And so where do we begin with asana when you have, you grew up as a child, and so you could do everything. When I saw you, I don't know what, 5'3", 5'10", as I saw you, you were doing the most complex asanas from a little child. But when you're a 30-year-old, or like I am in my 60s, where do I begin? And how do I begin?
This is actually where Swamiji's teachings are teachings that are accessible. And nowadays, the term accessible yoga has become very popular. And many of our students who teach abroad, they say the Geetananda tradition is the most accessible yoga friendly version that is there, because we have thousands of practices. So there's always going to be a dozen practices that anybody can do. So somebody cannot sit on the floor, there are going to be practices they can do. Somebody, cannot bend their knee, there are going to be practices they can do. Somebody cannot lie down, there are practices they can do. There's always going to be a bountiful practice, because nowadays we think of like 25 asanas and 7 or 8 pranayamas, and we think that's all yoga is. But when people come to us in our hospital, for example, there are people, they cannot sit on the floor. So we have to create opportunities for them to do practices, say from the bed. So people can do practices in the bed. They can crawl around on the mattress. One of the best practices to develop body awareness is crawling. So going on to all fours and just crawling around the room on your carpet or your bed or a mattress or whatever is one of the best practices, because virtually every muscle and bone and joint in your body gets exercised when you crawl. And this has been one of the most important rehabilitative practices we bring into hospitals. That when you want to help people regain the confidence of the body, you want people to know what their body is, you want to develop a healthy relationship with the body, one of the best practices is to crawl around. And my father used to again ask a question. He said, why do babies crawl? Why do babies crawl? And everybody said, because they cannot walk. He said, no, they crawl so that they can walk. So the baby's crawling is a preparation for standing up and walking. So when you want to approach the asana, especially with people who are elderly, we have a whole protocol called Silver Yoga. Silver Yoga, and our university now has a copyright for it. Silver Yoga, which is a protocol of yoga for senior citizens. What are the practices they can do? how you can develop it. And I think one of the best ways to develop this body awareness is just something like shaking our hand. And whenever I go to conferences, especially medical conferences, I have them do this. So just shaking your right hand, then shaking your left hand, and then shaking both hands. And I tell you, even this, most people, you say, do your right hand, they do the left. And I say, you are neurosurgeons, you are brain surgeons. And if you don't know right and left, imagine what can happen. You are a dentist and you don't know right and left, which tooth comes out. So we have a lot of fun. And this type of shaking, where we start to shake up and down and we clean up what we call our pranic field. You clean up the cobwebs of your energy body, and then you catch all your stress, take in a deep breath, and throw it all out. And this type of practice, suddenly the person realizes how they can connect to the body. Now, this is not a classical yoga asana. This is not a classical yoga technique, but it is like a pre-yoga yoga. Pre-yoga yoga. It is like preparing the person to start come into these futuristic practices. And both Ammaji and Swamiji created so many of these so that the children, we can work with them. We can work with the patients in the hospital. You know, people have a lot of repression and suppression. And there's a lot of emotional turmoil for people. How do you let go? By making sound. So you say, make a sound, ha, ha, ha. And what you do is when you make that sound, ha, 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 you end up with a beautiful belly laugh. And the moment you do this, all the serotonin comes into the body. And you do it with 500 kids in class, you do it with medical students, you do it with the senior citizens. And suddenly everybody's smiling, smiling from ear to ear. Everybody who came into the class and was so morose and down, like they were like, and suddenly they smile. Because you have given them an opportunity to create a beautiful, healthy awareness with the body. People who have disease have awareness, but it is a pathological awareness. It is a negative awareness of the body. Through yoga, we develop a salutogenic, a healthy, wellness-based awareness of the body. And this is how step by step, we help them breathe. As you breathe, you lift your arm. As you breathe out, you lower your arm. So what happens is you synchronize the body movement, slow, mindful body movement with slow, deep breathing. And so the body and the mind, you have brought them together. And who is the counselor? Who is the relationship builder? The breath. So the body movement, slow, mindful, governed by the mind, in tune with the breathing. And just helping people simple movements. I say, even if you just lift your finger 10 times and you do it with breathing. So breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. You have already created mind-body harmony. And you have started to understand your body. You bend down and touch your toes, you know your toes exist. Most people don't think that toes are connected to the brain because it's so far apart. You bend down and touch your toes and you get a good lesson in humility because you realize you cannot touch your toes, you cannot get beyond your knees. It's a good lesson in humility. And this is how, through these simplified practices, through these accessible practices, you develop awareness, and then slowly the person can come into the classical asanas.
Let me sort of take a step back in this discussion and say that, ask, what is the aspiration of yoga? It is, surely it is more than just good health. It is something much larger. And what is that destination that yoga seeks? Most of us approach yoga when we have a problem that we want solved, usually to do with the body and often with the mind, and to strike balance and harmony. But what is the goal of that balance and harmony?
In fact, I had a young man meet me some time back, and he said, I want to learn yoga, but my family thinks I shouldn't. I'm like, why does your family think you shouldn't? And he said, because they say you're already healthy, why do you need to do yoga? So, there is this idea that you only do yoga when you're unhealthy. But yoga is the best preventive medicine. You start early so that you prevent that which you can prevent. Once it occurs, you try to remedy it. And if it cannot be remedied, you learn how to manage it. That is where then the especially terminal conditions, we do a lot of quality of life enhancement. But coming back to your question, the goal of yoga is kaivalya, liberation. That alone is the goal. So to get out of all of this endless samsara cycle and be liberated. Now people say, why do I need that? Well, our soul, our atma, our jivana, whatever it is, it knows that. But we think, oh, I need to have a healthy body. Okay, yoga can help you have a healthy body. I need a healthy mind. Okay, yoga can help you. I need healthy relationships. Yoga can help you. I need healthy emotions. Yoga can help you. And you can do it. But they are only the positive spin-offs of yoga. They are not the goal of yoga. So the moment people say yoga for diabetes, yoga for hypertension, I think we have got it wrong. It is yoga for the sake of yoga alone. And when you live yoga, you practice yoga for the sake of yoga, your physical health will improve. Your mental health will improve. Your emotional health will improve. Because the World Health Organization talks of 4 domains: physical well-being, mental well-being, social well-being, and sometimes spiritual well-being. Yama and Niyama work on social well-being. Asana Pranayama on physical well-being. Pratyahara and Dharana on mental well-being. Dhyana Samadhi on spiritual well-being. So Patanjali already has given two angas for each of the domains of WHO. But health and wellness are a byproduct of yoga. They are not actually the goal. The goal of yoga, actually, Frank, is liberation and nothing but that. Yoganga Anushthanat Ashuddhik Shaye, says Patanjali. You get rid of all the impurities. And Jnana Deepti, the inner luminosity, comes alive so that you can see more clearly with the light. And our Viveka Khyati, the highest discerning intellect, so that you realize all of this is causing suffering, dukkha, and you want to get out of it. The same message Buddha gives, Patanjali gives, dukkhameva sarvam vivekinaha. All of this is dukkha. Let us get out of the dukkha. So ultimate goal of yoga is liberation, but along the way, all the other positive spin-offs are there. I say, as a doctor, I prescribe a medicine, it will have an effect, but it will also have an unwanted side effect. With yoga, when you practice yoga, you get a lot of positive side benefits. So that is another way to look at it also.
I think also that it's extremely crucial to recognize that yoga also builds up, and this is common use, common word that has come into the lexicon after COVID, resilience, which means that it gives us the resilience to deal with what unfolds, even when it is unpleasant, and to be able to accept that maybe I will never have the perfect body, I will never have the perfect mind, to accept reality as it is in our particular case. And so that gives us a kind of sort of, hopefully gives us, kind of equanimity and acceptance of what our, predicament is. And I think that, people like you, and there are very few like you, who have really pushed the boundaries of yoga in the sense of the yoga chikitsa, which is yoga therapy. And in some ways that this is what B.K. Iyengar was trying to do through the use of props, is to enable the benefits of yoga postures for people who could not attain them in pure ways. And I think your tradition has brought other techniques that make the advantages and benefits of yoga more accessible. But there is also sort of very a concern, and there are many traditions which in fact discourage the practice of yoga and asana, because they feel that it that it can lead to a body consciousness, a sense of the perfect body, and take you away from the spiritual, because and I believe that this has much to do with the absence or the presence of a guru or a teacher that guides the aspirant's journey to yoga. And this is what we are really seeing today. So I was wondering if you could give us a sense of the risks involved of embarking on an advanced, it's all right, if you're doing basic Anulom Vilom and basic practices of yoga, you're all right. But I think very often that, if you watch someone on television doing Bhastrika and pumping your stomach, and if you have hernia, you're dead. Almost anyway. And so, what are the words of advice, recommendation for those of us who at this age want to embark on a journey of yoga? How do we measure a good teacher? What are the danger points as we move ahead?
I think one of the biggest dangers is that we think we can learn it from a video, we think we can learn it from a book. And the necessity of a living teacher, the necessity of a living tradition cannot be overemphasized at all. And I am very strong promoter of the idea that we need a living tradition, a living teacher, because we are a living being. So a living being is constantly changing, and the human being is constantly changing and evolving. What we are yesterday, we are not today. What we are today, we are not tomorrow. So only a living teacher will be able to understand what practices you needed yesterday and what you may need tomorrow, and that they are different based on how you are changing as a human being. Whereas a book doesn't know it. And one of the commonest issues is that a practice that may be good for you when you are healthy may not be good for you when you are unhealthy. So a common thing that happens on the net, they say Dhanurasana, the bow posture, is good for the kidney health. Yes, great. B.K. Iyengar also said it in his Light on Yoga, so everybody likes it. If you are a healthy person and practicing the bow posture, Dhanurasana, it will help your kidneys be healthy, no doubt. But if you have a kidney disease, if your kidneys are swollen and you do Dhanurasana, you can damage your kidneys and kill yourself. So the same practice which was good as a preventive technique may not be good as a therapeutic technique. And this only a living tradition will know. This a book doesn't know the difference. An internet site doesn't know the difference. And even though they are developing mobile apps and other things, and we are part of some of those endeavors, it is very tough. And at the same time, the modern selfie craze, Instagram yoga, I call it. Instagram yoga is based on look at me and my asana in a very wonderful setting. And that is not the goal of yoga. Yoga is not based on an externalized evaluation. It is an internalized experiential journey. And everybody is on their own journey. You, Rajiv, you are on your journey. I'm on my journey. Every one of the 101 people participating in this, they are on their own journey. And yet, we want the same size fits all, same practice for everyone. So it is very important that we personalize the practice, because no two human beings, 7 billion plus, will soon be 8 billion, 7 billion plus human beings, and no two human beings have the same fingerprints. No two human beings have the same iris structure. Well, no two snowflakes are the same. Then how can we say that this will be the standardized yoga protocol? We have to set standards, and that standard setting is important, not standardization. And this is why this idea that everybody can do Anulom Vilom, everybody can do Shirsasana, everybody can do Pranayama, no. You need guidance of a living teacher who is connected to a living tradition, because yoga is a living tradition. It is not dead yet. People are trying to kill it. It is not dead yet. And my divine mother yoga is alive and thriving. And she has sons like me who will stand up for her. So definitely, yes, we have to be very careful that in transformation, it doesn't become mutation. We want yoga to evolve, but we don't want it to mutate. We don't want it to become plasticized. We want it to have the humanistic aspect. Because as you said, adaptive resilience is facilitated by the yoga practices. Your body starts to adapt to the changes. Your breath adapts, your mind adapts, your emotions adapt. You as an individual start to adapt to your environment. And that is how we grow as a human being.
But tell me, how do we evaluate? I mean, say I'm sitting here in Delhi and I want to start a yoga practice. And how do I find this guru? How do I evaluate a teacher? because, at the moment we are, and you have now just been appointed to the accreditation panel of yoga teachers. So that places a huge responsibility on you, because people come out with this stamp of a qualified teacher. And then we watch yoga on Rajpath and on Times Square, and thousands of people doing it. Or we have teachers in yoga who are asking us to do very complex processes. So where do we begin to, I want to start a practice of yoga. Where do I begin? What do I do?
Well, the first thing is, don't search the internet. Because what I have found is that the best of the teachers don't advertise. The best of any field, they never have to advertise. And I think that itself is a mark. If the person, you find them advertising right, left, and center, you know that they are after commercial gain and they are not about anything else. I think one of the basic tenets for me is that teacher living the teachings? This is how my rule of thumb is. Does that teacher live the teachings? Which means I need to observe the teacher. I need to see their situation. I need to understand them for some time. It is not just, does the website look good? Website looking good, new, beautiful YouTube channels. These are not the marks of a good teacher at all. So the first mark is the person living the teaching? Are they a role model for those teachings? That is the first and foremost rule of thumb. The second rule of thumb is, do they have humility? Because the greater the teacher, the greater the person grows spiritually, the more humble they become. So for me, in my life, thanks to Swamiji and Ammaji, I've met so many great people. And the greatest of them are always the most humble of the lot. So is humility a quality of that teacher? The third one, do they radiate the spirit of yoga, which is the spirit of oneness, which is the spirit of relationship? And is there a sense of respect for each and every form of life? Because if it is someone who says only my yoga is correct and everybody else is a fool, well, that is also a danger. If there's someone who says, my asana is correct, but his asana is wrong, I think already we have started to fall into a trap. Because there are as many paths as there are individuals. So it is not for us to say somebody's path is right or wrong. But we need to know about the traditions. And this is something I have learned from my childhood, is try to understand all the traditions. But ultimately, you will live your own tradition, which is closest to your heart. But you have to realize respect is to be given. What you put out comes back. Does the teacher radiate love? Do they radiate respect? Do they radiate humility? Do they radiate a sense of oneness of humanity? I think those are the key elements. And I know your next question is, where do you find them?
Yes, where do you find them?
Very tough, very tough. Because the yoga tradition was never the teacher standing in front of the teacher saying, I'm going to save you. That was never part of the Indian cultural tradition. The student had to become worthy and the guru would appear. That is our tradition. So not just a net search, not just sending an email to the teacher and saying, I want to join your course. And then, of course, I paid your fees. Now it's your job to teach me. I think, there's nothing, I'm not against people making money in yoga. Many people think I'm against it. No. There is a righteous, dharmic way to have earning. But then there's also something called need and greed. And is the person living a life where needs are fulfilled, or are they living a life that is showing greed? Because the moment greed comes, you are just going to be one more, Excel file in the list of bank accounts. So I think it's a very, very deep one there.
But that is really the challenge for, most aspirants, is that this makes yoga extremely, in some ways, elitist. And so there is this sort of crossfire, cross fertilization in some senses that is needed, the middle path. And how do we evolve that middle path? because people no longer have the luxury to be able to retreat to ashrams. Is yoga not for them?
Yeah.
It was traditionally fairly elitist, and it was not the Aam Aadmi who could access yoga.
Yes.
So this balance between accessing yoga, and where is that sort of fine line that to find between finding a teacher in the old Gurukul tradition that you could surrender to. I mean, I've seen your father was capable when wrath was needed, he could manifest wrath. When compassion was needed, he could manifest very tender love and compassion. And I think that great teachers evoke that confidence that you can surrender yourself and your body, because they are pushing your boundaries, and it can easily snap if it's not done properly. So, since you are now on the Ayush board, you're a professor in a hospital, you run an ashram, you are going to be certifying, who's a good teacher, and as I mean, the horrible word, as a consumer of those teachings by those teachers, what do I do? What's the middle path that you can offer?
Well, what we do is that, especially during the pandemic, I have personally reached out through the internet, and thousands of sessions offered freely, without any cost, without any need to sign up, without any idea that I'm claiming somebody is claiming them from me or my organization. I think one thing I have found is that more and more of the yoga teachers are now starting to share. And especially when the sharing is done with caring. I believe in the motto, caring and sharing in a loving manner. And when that is done, I think people are going to get enough even out of that. In the last 2 years, I've had so many people benefit from my 108 days of sessions or my scintillating Saturdays, and it helps them. So similarly, there will be people getting these opportunities to be helped by people who are putting it out there. And then someone says, I want to go deeper, I want to take up your course. Okay, you can sign up for it. So, you have that. But then as a certification board, the government felt there had to be some sort of certification, because every Tom, Dick, and Harry can be a yoga teacher today. They can be a yoga therapist. And so in attempting to do this, they have tried to create certain standards. And so the person should know, this aspect of the yoga tradition. They should know these asanas. They should know these pranayamas. So I would say, like, someone who has this certification, at least the one thing is that there is at least some basic knowledge and capability. So they will be a good place to start for someone who just wants to do the practice. But they may not be capable of guiding the person as a spiritual guide, which only a guru can do. So I think we are going to have more of this happen. And in this, it's like the, samudra, the churning of the ocean. Nectar also came, poison also came, the goodies also came, the baddies also came. We will have a bit of that. But I think over the next decade, I feel that we will find a balance where people will start to see the difference.
Because, it is, I think, important to recognize as we embark on our personal journeys of locating a qualified yoga teacher and engaging in the practice is, and I wanted you to, alert us to some of the signs of danger. There was a Stanislav Grof who did a wonderful book called Spiritual Emergencies. So what are the signs that we should look for that will tell us, look, this yoga is going wrong? Because and because I, sort of my little limited exposure has taught me that, asanas are, perfected over a long period of time. And there is, it has a certain relaxed flow to it, that you're not grasping to perfectly imitate the posture that the yoga teacher or frequently his the demonstrator is showing us. And we're pushing that. and that simultaneously, it's, you're looking at your body, and there's a sense of a larger, I don't want to call it infinite or divine or whatever you want to say. And, the body mustn't shake. And if it causes restlessness after it, then, something is wrong. You should feel ease and comfort. So what are some of the red herring signals we should look at that say, look, this is not right?
Yeah, I would say one is that the practices should give you a sense of sukha, which is ease. So if the practices are putting you into a physical, emotional, or mental state of uneasiness, most probably something is not on track. The second is pain is always a good warning signal. Physical, mental, emotional pain is again a very good signal. The third one is it helping you to sense a greater feeling of your life, or is it sort of disconnecting you from life? Because the practice of yoga shouldn't be one that disconnects you from life. It should make you feel more alive. And this is why, one of the important things, because people think spirituality means drab dullness. It's not. It's bountiful abundance. Spirituality is bountiful abundance of a different type. So do you start to have that feeling? So I think one of the most important signals is intense pain. Now, if you have never used your body and you go to a yoga class, you may have a little bit of pain, but that is a good pain. So you need to ask yourself, is this a good pain that is coming because I'm starting to use body parts that were not used earlier? Or is it a sign of trouble? So a little bit of viveka, a little bit of discernment needs to be there. Pain is a very good signal. Second one is, does it make you feel uneasy? You don't feel like yourself. You don't feel yourself. If that happens, definitely something is not going right there. And you need to communicate with your teacher and say, I don't feel at ease when I do these practices. Can you please guide me? I don't feel a sense of sukha. That sukha must come with the practice. And at the end of the session, you should feel an enhanced energy, not tiredness. If your yoga session makes you dead tired, it's physical exercise, it's not yoga. You should come out of it with a pranic infusion. You have had a pranic infusion. A zest for life should be there. So it should enhance your zest for life. I think these are a few of the ones. And of course, if the teacher is always after your credit card, then please run the opposite direction.
Well, I have to really thank you, because I think many of these qualities that you're talking about from a yoga session have come up for us just listening to you. And so we're deeply grateful for that. I did want to just flag one factor that you may not have emphasized in my own journey, I felt, is that if sometimes teachers will sort of nudge us into a kind of competitiveness with oneself, rather than easing into pushing the boundaries, when you're actually pushing the boundaries because you want to reach some target. And that becomes a form of yogic materialism in itself.
Exactly.
And I think that because we are living in such a competitive society, if you're doing a yoga class, you want to be able to do your yoga as well as the person next to you, and to be able to get into that posture. And if you don't, then you feel, somewhat of a failure. I think that competitiveness really needs to be managed, because finally, yoga is a microcosm that you use to access the macro picture. And if we don't relate to that microcosm in healthy, balanced ways, in relationship with the teacher, I think it's extremely difficult these days to find teachers for like a father or some of the other names I've mentioned, who you could surrender to. So I think it's very valuable that we keep our sense of balance in mind. Well, we have several questions, and we have Aparna to sort of moderate that. And so over to you, young lady.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. To begin with, we have a question from Ashwini Gupta, who asks if there is a particular or perhaps a few books that you could refer us to, to begin our journey, on this path?
I'm not into selling books, but I think one thing that people can do is Google Bhavanani Yoga, and there's no other Bhavanani in yoga at all on this planet. So, they'll get hundreds of my articles that are uploaded for free. There are hundreds, thousands of YouTube videos for free. And then if they want, they can go to our website, and there are beautiful books by my father, my mother, and myself. And these are books that have been written with the idea to share the teachings without any mutation at all. And so they are hardcore teachings.
Right, right.
I'm going to ask a supplementary question to that. But the problem is that because there are hundreds and thousands of articles and books, which is the first one we should read?
Okay, the latest place where you can read some good stuff is on Medium, where I started writing blogs that are short, and you will find some very good blogs that I'm writing to help people understand the depth of yoga in digestible doses. So, I'm trying to give them in small doses to digest. So there's one on yoga as a living tradition I shared today, on pranayama, on asana, just to get the context. And those who want the scientific side, academia has all my scientific papers. So you can have the scientific side also. But I think the Medium blog is a good place to start in that way.
I just want to just sort of, add to that, because I know that, and I'm sorry, I call a guru by his first name, but it's very difficult not.
You are a loved elder and mentor for me.
No, please. So, I think that, and this is, someone who has also been, there is a Desikachar, has been a very valuable teacher. There were 4 teachers of Swami Geetananda generation who have been icons. And I think that any of their introductory writings are also, very seminal. There was big Ananda's Life and Yoga.
I was just commenting from, what's available on our side.
Yes, absolutely.
Be it TKV Deshikachar, his writings are beautiful. Of course, when it comes to asana, Iyengar is the gold standard. And then Swami Rama has some very good writings, and his students, Swami Veda Bharati and others, very beautiful, illuminating writings are there.
Right. We have another very interesting question from Ranjit Nair. He asks whether there is something like yogic perception, and if so, what is the evidence for it? I mean, I'm not sure we can get into that, but if you'd like to respond to the idea of yogic perception and what that is.
There is a concept of yoga drishti. Yoga drishti is the yogic perception of the universe. And this is shared a lot by Sankhya. So Sankhya and yoga as a darshana give us a perception of the universe. And the yogic perception is that the universe is real as long as you are part of it. And once you transcend it, it's real for those who are still stuck in it. So I like to say it's like you go to watch a movie, you come out of the movie halfway, the movie doesn't exist for you, but it still exists for those who are in the theater. This is the yogic perspective, that everything exists for your experience and for your liberation. Bhoga apavargartam drishyam, says Patanjali. So the yogic perception is slightly different than Vedanta that says everything is illusion. In yoga, it says it is there for your experience and to facilitate your liberation. So this is the yoga drishti. And there are 4 YouTube talks on that.
And having said that, I think it's also extremely important to recognize is that the limits of the verbalization of what you're calling yoga drishti. Yes. And I think that when I mentioned that example of parts of my body that consciousness had not reached,
exactly,
that sensation that the body has captured of an expression of consciousness in human form cannot be communicated. But the genius of our civilization, and this is where I think yoga plays a very critical role, is the combination of method and wisdom. So yoga provides the method through which we can glimpse the experience of whatever visions that you're talking about, because we can talk about it till doomsday. And, going back to, let's not forget that even, Swami Vivekananda, when he spoke of the 4 yogas, that's what he was really doing, that, the Hatha Yoga, has elements of bhakti. And so all the yogas overlap. They're not sort of exclusive. When he talked about the Jnana Yogi, and so the Jnana is also involved in Hatha Yoga. So they're not sort of isolated, complete entities. So I think that, when we become a mind-only civilization or culture that looks for everything to be explained verbally, this is where yoga offers one of the most sort of concrete, tangible methods to be able to experience this larger, whatever you want to call it, whether you want to call it Maya, whatever particular perception that is. And I think that is what when he's talking about the ancient traditions, it really is, these are not just verbal transmissions. They are transmissions of method. So someone like Ananda will have been given a glimpse, at least a glimpse, if not more, in his lifetime, through the methods and techniques that he has learned and he has inherited. And so it becomes a transmission of lived experience through method. And it's very crucial that we recognize and accept that. And hence, as he pointed out right in the beginning, there is no instant variety of insight and wisdom.
So true, so true.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think in the course of the conversation, some of the questions that had been asked have already been, referenced, and they have been answered. I'm just going to thank everybody who's asked questions. There's Fernando, Antonio, Rajiv, then there's Kunsang, and a few people who have chosen to be anonymous. But I think we're sort of done with the questions, because I think in some form or the other, they've all been given answers to. So I think we're done with questions. Rajiv, if you'd like to sort of take over.
Well, I mean, it's 7:15, but I will ask a sort of a final question, and that really is that as a yoga practitioner who embodies that tradition, and you're still a very young man, and in terms of your life's journeys, obviously there are 2 elements. One is the element of your own evolution, continuing evolution and growth, and now your children and their evolution and growth, and your wife who's your partner, and the larger canvas in which you are investing your time. You could be just running an ashram in splendid isolation and continuing to accelerate your own journey into nirvana or samadhi, whichever phrase we want to use. But you're working in the humdrum world of being a professor at a university, Chikitsa center, on numerous government bodies, and anyone who's served in government bodies knows that it can be quite a challenge and a nightmare. So I just want to, a sense as we wind up, as yoga aspirants, you are a model. So what is this balance between the turmoil of samsara? And there are some aspects of samsara as a householder, which are natural processes. But how do you strike this balance between samsara and your personal quest? Does it slow it down? Is it some kind of ideal where we say that this my journey is nothing unless it's engaging and learning from samsara? How have you worked this out for yourself? In the old days, you had these gurukuls where the Swamijis or the teachers lived in splendid isolation, spoilt by society and the community, and had these students to deal with.
For me, my whole life is my sadhana. So my life is my sadhana. So be it my life as a parent, as a husband, as a son, be it my life as a professor, be it my life as a human being, as part of the society, I feel that every moment of my life is giving me an opportunity to become a better version of myself, refine myself, discard those parts that are not really the true me, and ultimately work towards that highest goal. Even my bio profile on Facebook says, aspiring Purna Purusha, wanting to be a wholesome human being and a potential candidate for Kaivalya. I think, that is what my ultimate goal is. My goal is very clear, Kaivalya. Nothing less than Kaivalya is my goal. But I don't feel that anything is a distraction, because I feel that it's all part of the sadhana. And this is where I love Patanjali's concept of Bhoga Apavargarta. You are having that experience. So somebody is nice to you, it is an experience for your growth. Somebody is not nice to you, well, it's also an experience for your growth. You're on a committee which is easy, good, not easy, good. So though as a human being, your emotions may become volatile, though you will have those days of depressed, why me? I have a lot of those days. Though Swamiji gave me the name Ananda and said, you must be your name. So whenever I am in Anandam, I am myself. There are many days I don't have Anandam. And I tell people this frankly, because it's easy to think, oh, he has it easy. No, we all have struggles. But the struggle is there to make us better. It is like our spiritual gym. The struggles are like our spiritual gym to help the spiritual muscles get enhanced so that we can move forward on that trajectory towards the highest liberation. So my attitude is that not a single moment in my life is not my sadhana. So for me, there is no separation, there's no viyoga, it is all yoga, it is all one, and it is all for the sake of the Atma alone. It is all for the sake of that embodied being which has come onto this planet, experiencing what it is experiencing for the sake of Kaivalya ultimately.
Thank you very much, Ananda, for the time we have spent together in your spiritual gym. I love that analogy, and I think you have exercised and impacted, all our certainly psychological, emotional muscles, and maybe we will get a chance to exercise the physical ones too at some point with you in a workshop. So thank you very much. And thank you, Aparna, for your efforts, and Jamyang and Shilpi and Kunsang and our entire team, and all of you participants. Our next session will be on April the 1st, April Fool's Day. And when I contacted my friend Dr. Rajan Sankaran, who's an iconic homeopath, who will come and talk about homeopathic approaches to healing the mind. And he says, well, are you serious? It's April Fool's Day. So thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Ananda. And my regards and greetings to Amma and your wonderful family. And I remember our time in the ashram well. Thank you.